lexical replacements, and there's probably many people who know English at all know that there are lots of lexical differences between North American English, which includes Canada, and British English, which includes England. And so you get elevator in Canada for lift, and bus for coach, and pants for trousers. Pants in England means underpants. And so when I moved to England the first time, and my children, who were 4 and 7, used the word pants, their schoolmates giggled and laughed and embarrassed them so that they wanted to go home to Canada. And sweater for jumper, actually that's a change that's happening now. Some of you will know in England, sweaters being used more and more. And so on, crib for cotton, diaper for nappy, garbage can for dustbin, fries for chips, which of course becomes very important in the modern era. And so you get all of these lexical changes, and it's no problem, of course, to discover when you've got children from 2 families. And so I had a set of pictures that included these items and many other items that are not part of the study. And I would go in and I would show them the pictures every 3 or 4 months and record their responses. They say, oh yeah, those are fries. Oh yeah, those are chips, and so on. And eventually plot the sort of progress of British lexical items, Southern England English lexical items in their speech. And when you look at the results, these are the children's ages on the bottom. So a boy 9, his brother 13, a boy from another family 13, a 14-year-old brother of 13Y, a 15-year-old girl who's the sister of the 9 and 13-year-old, and a 17-year-old boy. And this was their ages at the end of my study, right? So the study started when they were 2.5 years younger than this. But you can see there's a lovely age correlation that works very nicely there. The lexical replacements show a gradual decline with age. The younger you are, the more lexical items you replace. And that's the kind of change that surprises no one. Everybody thinks that's just the way it ought to be. But then when we look at more complex changes, and I'm going to look at 2 of them, and I don't want you to necessarily understand what they are. I just want you to know that they are complicated, that they are complex phonological changes. So in Canada, we say plaster, bath, laughing, dance, branch, France, planet, right, with al. And in the southeast of England, where these children were living at this time, those words are pronounced place de bath, laughing, class, plant, France, and so on. And words that make a North American's blood tingle. I don't know why. And so the children were intended to go about acquiring these new, this sort of rule. And what happens when you look at the results over this 2.5 year span, it turns out to be no age gradation. In fact, the population is split in 2 pretty neatly. And I'll just go on and show you a second one. Now this is the unmerging of back vowels. In Canada, the words in these 2 lists are all pronounced with the same vowel. For me, the vowel is low back and rounded ah. So I say Don and Don, cot and cot, Jolly and Paul, top and naughty, so on, right? But in the southeast of England, where these children are acquiring the accent, those vowels are different. So the one on the left is dawn, and the one on the right is dawn. That's a bit New York, but never mind, that's the best I can do. So yeah, and unmerging vowels, as you probably can guess, is going to be a hell of a task. And here's what it shows in the 2.5 years. The progress is very spotty. 2 of the people are making progress, the rest of them are not. And so I came up with these results, okay? So that, as long as that's clear, you don't need any more detail in order to get the point. But my question was, what the heck is going on? What's this all about? The youngest subject is making great progress on both of these complex changes. The next youngest, when the 13-year-old makes no progress on one, or almost no progress, and great progress on the other, the unmerging, which I mean really fooled me. I thought it would be the hardest one. And the other 13-year-old makes almost no progress on either of them. And of course, the people over 13 are pretty much flat lines. All right. So I presented these results. I presented these results at Bomberg conference. I mean, just by the most astounding coincidence, we've got Jaime Granish here who did all of the work, almost all the work for this huge Bomberg dialectology conference in 1990, where this happened. And I presented these results. And in the question period, Motwe Sawaki was sitting right back there and so proud to see himself on the screen. Not. He said, do you know about Professor Shibata's Gengo Keiseki? And so we had a long talk afterwards and a lot of beer. And at the reception 2 days later, we sang a duet, You Are My Sunshine. And I could not find the photograph. I mean, somebody sent me a photograph, but I couldn't find that photograph. I can only find this one. And you can see that Motwe looks like he's there under duress. But when you know Motwe, you know that he's really very happy to be there. Here's the whole, this is Yasue Kumagai, who works here at this place. He probably has children older than he was then. Now, and then you can see I'm holding them both in place, or otherwise they're going to run. Anyway, so Motwe Sawaki said, do you know? And I said, how can I know? And he said, I'll send you a translation of what you need to know. And he did. You can see translated. This is the reference that's in the language article translated by Motwe Sawaki. It's a manuscript. And here's the essence of Gengo Keiseki. This is Shibata speaking, right? He says in 1949, right, long time ago, 1949, about 500 children were still left in Shirakawa City who were displaced directly from Tokyo and Yokohama to avoid bombardment. We interviewed every child, and this is so characteristic of Takeshi Shibata, very, very fastidious. We interviewed every child and found that children who came there before about 6 or 7 years of age had adopted Shirakawa dialect almost perfectly in the course of 5 or 6 years, while those who came at age 14 or more were not affected at all by that dialect. This is a study of 500 children over a several-year period, and it gave me a kind of confidence to having this kind of empirical result. It gave me a kind of confidence that helped me to make sense of what my results were like. So a person under seven or under will almost certainly acquire the new dialect perfectly. That's what my results seem to be showing for these complex phonological elements. A person 14 or over almost certainly will not. And so those thresholds that were set up in Shirakawa City seem to be holding pretty well in this study as well. And what happens between the ages of 7 and 14, you can't predict. Shibata didn't try to predict. I can prove that you can't predict because 13X is an early acquirer and 13Y isn't. As it happens later on, no, never mind, that's a different story. But, so we get the Gengo Keiseki, this language forming period, which comes along and it now underlies the principle 4 in the dialect acquisition study. The acquisition of complex rules and new phonemes splits the population into early acquirers and late acquirers. And so Takeshi Shibata's work gives that principle a kind of grounding that otherwise it might not have had. So are early and late acquirers correlated with age? Well, not really. The age thresholds around 7, if you move to a new area before 7, you're almost certainly going to acquire the accent and the dialect. If you move after the age of 14, you're almost certainly always going to sound like you're an outsider. And in between, you can't tell, you can't predict. And those thresholds have now been applied in several studies and generally seem to hold. So that's an interesting piece of work. Gengo Keiseki, another of the concepts. So I'm going to just give a shorter example of an insight from Takashi Shibata that has made an impression on my work. And it's another case where I had empirical results that I was having trouble making sense of, and once again I turned to him among all the other people in the literature, of course, and got some help. So who are the leaders in language change, and what are they like? What are their personalities like? And again, I'm just going to give you a little context and show you my result, and then show you what Takashi Shibata had to do with it. This is a phenomenon called ao-non raising, which is now pretty much gone. But it was a change that seemed to be in progress in Toronto in the 1970s. And the 22-year-olds who were in my survey were the most active ao-non raisers in the whole sample. And you can see these are individuals that I've shown here. So Elizabeth, on the right side there, is a considerable non-raiser. About 1/3 of her ao defines that as words like around and town. She had town and so on. Anyway, she had unraised onsets almost 1/3 of the time. And the next highest score in her age group was 14%. And her best friend Anne is the one at the farthest end, had none at all. Right? So, I mean, it's really a strange looking configuration. And it's notably conservative in all kinds of ways. But anyway, when I got this result, I was bowled over because Elizabeth does not seem to be a leader in any sense of the word. Right? Here she is leading this group, but she's a teacher's aide, she's a joiner, she participates in all kinds of activities. She's outgoing but quiet, right? So she's not shy, but she's also not noisy and not quiet. And she's, everybody likes her. She's a central participant in her social circle. She goes along with the others. She is what I call, in the study that came out of this, it's also in my textbook, by the way, an insider. And then you get this, what might seem like an anomaly. Elizabeth is racing ahead of all the others in the use of this linguistic marker, which it was, and which it seemed to be at that time. So this is the idea of an insider. And this kind of characterization isn't anything that draws attention to itself. It's not like we have outsiders, people who are alienated. Right? We all recognize these as social types, but this kind of insider, someone who is like in the heart of his or her social group, doing all the things that the other people in the social group do, and doing none of them exceptionally well, but doing them all, right? With enthusiasm. This kind of insider, a phenomenon that has not been remarked on very often. Well, I'm just going to show you a little study by Takashi Shibata, not little at all, a study that he made. What he did, I mean, this is, I don't know whether we can do this, I don't know whether you can replicate this today. He singled out several elementary school children, and he taught them what he called artificial words. So he said, bungle, that means your lunch is good. I don't know. He didn't give me any examples. And he instructed the children, those children who he singled out, he said, I want you to use these words in class, and I want you to teach them to your classmates. And a week later, he came back to the classroom, and he interviewed every single student in the class, right? Everyone that, again, Takashi Shibata didn't do things by halves. To find out how the words had been disseminated, incidentally, something that is not part of what I'm going to tell you today, that he did sociometric diagrams. So the things that Jenny Cheshire did, for instance, with writing school children, and Bill Boff did with the